Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today to talk about relationships and to talk about the truth about marriage. And I have Roger Nygard here, who recently finished a documentary that took 7 years to make, The Truth About Marriage. And I'm so excited to have you here. I loved your film. I thought it was incredible and deep and interesting and so much wisdom from it. I actually, just thinking about it, recommended this morning to one of my clients. I said, oh my God, you have to watch this with your husband. So thank you so much for all of your work that went into that.
What a great endorsement. You've already recommended the film. I can't ask for anything more.
Yes. And I love, as we were just talking, I love that you're single and this was an exploration of, what is love? What is relationship? What makes it work? And where are we going wrong?
Yeah, being a single person, your brain goes to the catastrophic thinking of what's wrong with me? Why can't I do it right? Everyone else is doing it right. Or it seems that way when you look at social media.
Then you come to find out.
No.
Most people are not happy.
We're all doing what I learned in making the documentary and talking to all these experts and therapists is we're all doing it wrong. We're all doing relationships wrong. Some less wrong than others because we've had time through trial and error, try this, try that. And just always struck me as odd that there's no class in high school to teach you how to have a relationship.
I know. I was saying the sex education I got, I've said this before, in 8th grade, my health teacher was like, have a great weekend, use a condom, Sex education was like anatomy education. It wasn't anything about sex, even physically, but also emotionally and intimately.
How do you connect with someone in a way that you feel happy and they feel happy, and then you can maintain it with longevity, and they give you no guidelines. And it turns out there are things that we should do or could do if you want to increase your happiness and the length of your relationship. Very simple things that are done early. One of the therapists I interviewed, John Friel, said that when couples come to him, he's a marriage therapist, and they say, we need help. It's usually when things are at the end, and it's like going to the emergency room and saying to the doctor, I broke my leg 7 years ago. Can you please help me? Why didn't you come when you first hurt yourself? And it would have been so much easier.
There's so much shame, around that, or whether it's, shame to even tell your partner that you're unhappy in certain ways, or shame to admit to the outside world. So a lot of times people come to me. I think actually as a coach, people come to me a little bit sooner, which I think is awesome because some of them recognize, oh, I want to put something into place to have an extraordinary relationship, not just a good one. But I see that a lot too. So what are some of the simple things that you learned that we could be doing from the beginning?
Well, it's a little bit different. The advice that I learned was a little bit different to the masculine side of the brain and the feminine side of the brain, because we all have parts of both and some have more than others. And generally, you want to end up with somebody who's different. You don't want to find someone who's exactly the same as yourself. You want someone who completes you, not duplicates you.
I remember John Gottman talking about that in your film. We're not actually looking for the same, and actually that would be genetically really bad.
It's better for the offspring, yes, for two very different people to come together. And that's going to bring to the surface conflict. Here's the biggest thing I learned that we're doing wrong. And I'm going to speak to the masculine side of the brain first. Okay. What we don't do is listen enough. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Listen, what you need to do, and we don't do anymore, is you need to come home every day and give the feminine partner's brain some nutrient that's the listening nutrient, which is, honey, how was your day? How are you feeling? And then shut up. Don't try to fix it. Don't offer solutions. They don't want advice. They need to process the emotions of the day. Just download it. Someone to just listen for about 15 to 20 minutes. Huh. And without
that you're saying the feminine side of the brain too, because some men actually need this and want this, right?
We all
Both
do.
People could.
To varying degrees.
Yes.
But the one partner is going to tend to have the more, whatever those traits are that we tend to call feminine or tend to call masculine. And the sexual spark comes from when people are very different and opposite. And if they're over time, habituation sets in, and that's when passion drops because people become very similar, they become the same. Yeah. But if you come home, shut off the iPhone, put it on airplane mode for 15 minutes because you're going to be distracted otherwise. Turn off the TV, make eye contact, and practice active listening. And this costs you nothing except 15 minutes. Try the experiment for 1 week. And I guarantee you, after a week, 2 weeks, whatever, your sex life is going to get better.
Yes.
Everything's going to get better. Your relationship's going to get better. You're going to be happier. And then practice what they call capitalization. If your partner comes home and says, oh, this great thing happened to me today, or this terrible thing happened. But if it's a great thing, you say, wow, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. Tell me about it. Because if you don't do that, you get dinged for it. You get it's a penalty.
They're going to feel unseen and not uncelebrated.
By celebrating the good accomplishment, you're both happier and it lasts all week. And it's cumulative and things get better. But we tend to not do that. We get on our iPhone. We start texting, whatever, watching TV. I just need to come home and relax, honey.
Yeah.
That your partner needs 15 to 20 minutes of active listening where you just shut up. Now, the other side of that is the feminine needs to think about the masculine is that the masculine is a little different. We all want connection. We all need connection, but it's different. The feminine seeks connection 24/7, constant. We need to be always together. But the masculine also desires connection. But once the masculine has connection, then the desire switches and becomes freedom. And there's this orbit that happens that the masculine goes through. And if you try to get in the way of that and block it, we must always be together, you're going to have resistance, which leads to anger and argument and conflict.
As you're talking about this, it's like how rare eye contact actually is. And even more so these days with iPhones and, all of the gadgets and stuff. But, when I work with couples, or even if I work with oftentimes single men, to look even through the Zoom window, right? It's like, it can bring up a lot of discomfort and it can be awkward. And so I just think it's so fascinating that we've come so far from being able to just simply connect.
But when you do it, that's how you seduce somebody. You recognize them you look them in the eye, and then it feels like our souls are connecting because you're talking eye to eye. You're not shifting away and looking this way or that way, shifty-eyed. You're connecting person to person.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference psychologically.
I was talking about how the spark actually builds in the silence, right? It's not necessarily the words we use, but in that connection that you're speaking of, right? And even as we're looking at each other, it's like you can feel there's kind of this palpable energy starts to build that if we don't dissipate it, and if there's a mutual desire for something, right, it starts to turn into that spark and that passion.
Exactly. If you want to seduce somebody, meet with them, make eye contact, and then ask questions and shut up. Just questions about their life, who they are, what do they like, favorite color, their family, anything, as long as you're talking and asking them about themselves and showing genuine interest.
Yeah. I also talk about how, you can ask questions, like you could just throw pepper question after question, but where you really go deep is where you ask questions about the answers. Right? Like
that means you're paying attention. You're listening.
Exactly. And you don't have to figure it out before the person says the thing. You're just actually following the lead of what they're sharing.
Right. So the instinct is to wait for your turn to talk and then say something about yourself. And that's what you have to consciously work at not doing. Don't jump in with, well, I thought, or I felt, or this happened to me. Just keep asking about the other person. Yeah. Eventually it'll come back to you and they'll ask about you. But otherwise, you run the risk of it seeming like, all he does is care about himself because all he did was talk about himself.
Right. Unless you're a nice guy, you identify as a nice guy, and you constantly just ask and never, share anything about yourself or take care of yourself, then we've got to have a little more balance there.
Right. What I'm focusing on is like more that initial time when you first meet.
Yeah.
And then you do need to share and be willing to open up and be open, but it's hard to be vulnerable, right? You need to earn that for someone to be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
And so you shouldn't, first date isn't the time to download all of your problems and all of
no, I would agree
all of your
with
issues.
Here, lay them on the table. Unless
right. Too soon.
Yeah, too soon. But I do think from my perspective, you can be vulnerable and open about things, right? As long as you're not dumping them and that's not the whole focus of the conversation. Oftentimes men come to me who have divorced or they're single later in life, and they're like, I want to actually have some fun, but I also want it to be deep, right? So you can actually bring that vulnerability and create that depth, like you're saying.
Imagine if you're honest with somebody and you said that right up front,
exactly.
and this is who I am, and this is what I want.
This is what I'm. Yeah.
And if they have a negative reaction, you're going to save yourself so much time and energy with the wrong person. But I bet you they're going to respect the fact that you are genuine.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, what are the other things that either we should be doing, the simple things, or what are we doing wrong? Because you said you learned a bunch about what we're doing wrong.
Conflict. Everybody is doing conflict wrong. Conflict inevitably comes up because in our culture now we share so much in terms of resources. And so it naturally comes up. What are we going to spend money on? And who's going to decide whether I want to buy a boat? Well, we need to buy braces or for the child or this private school, whatever the issue is, or this is cleanliness. The garage is a mess.
Oh my God, I had a couple yesterday who was fighting about that.
How do you fix that, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's how it's done according to the experts, like Pat Allen and some of the others. What you should do is make an appointment to argue.
I like it.
So it would be more like, honey, I'd like to talk to you about the garage. When is a good time? Hopefully this afternoon? No, I'm busy this afternoon.
I thought you were going to say, honey, I'd like to have an argument with you about the garage. Can we schedule that for later today?
Well, that's a little aggressive. Maybe it's just a talk. Let's just
okay,
talk.
So you're just saying, can we schedule a time to talk?
We need a time to talk because there's something on my mind. Yeah. And I know you're busy now.
Yeah.
And so, okay, how about tomorrow at 10 a.m.? That's too early. Okay, what about 3 p.m.? Okay, fine. Now you have an appointment. So you write it down on a piece of paper. That makes it real and tangible. Put it on the refrigerator. It's not just I forgot we said it. No, it's there. It's an appointment. And this really helps the masculine part of the brain to prepare. The masculine side is really bad at ambush discussions.
Yes.
It needs time to know it's coming and sort of work up to it. And then don't talk over long, because what John Gottman calls flooding happens, where the masculine part of the brain can only talk about emotional things for about 20 minutes before it gets overloaded. It's like a computer that has a limited capacity. The feminine side of the brain is much more suited to these sort of discussions and can last longer. So you need to just be aware of that. So now you've got the appointment. Tomorrow we're going to talk about it. And then when you get there, remove the word or the pronoun you and replace it with I.
Big. Oh my gosh, this is a good one.
Instead of you're a slob, it's I feel anxious when the garage is so messy. How can you help me with that?
Yes.
Can you imagine you're going to get a better response putting someone on the defensive?
So necessary, right? Anybody I work with, we talk about how anytime you say you, someone immediately gets defensive. They may take it personally. They may feel hurt, right? It's so much more vulnerable though to say I, but it works so much better.
It's solution-based, right? You want a good outcome. The whole point is a good outcome, not to get into an argument. You actually want the garage cleaner so you can feel better. And so it's a little bit of a strategy. That you have to be smart about your conflict.
Yes.
And
I found myself saying this morning to a woman client, men don't take action when they're being attacked or when they're just being ignored, right? It's like that middle place where, we're going to collaborate. How can you help me with this is such a good one.
And if you can put it in terms of I am hurting or I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling this way or that way.
Yep.
Can you help me with that? They put that way, I'm going to step right up and say, yes, I want to help you. I want you to feel better. I got to clean the garage. Well, okay, you know what? Let's schedule a garage cleaning for 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And then, you come to a solution.
Yeah. Maybe lots of baggage where someone wouldn't be like, okay, honey, I'm going to do that. But that's something that has to get worked out, right? Couples have to have, I think, this conflict. Otherwise, if there's no conflict, then people are just usually just squashing their desires.
Right. That's what it's for. Conflict serves a purpose, and it's in relationships naturally. And if your partner says, we'll never give you a time to meet to discuss the garage, you're not in a relationship.
Yeah. You've got a problem. Yeah. And I do work with many people who identify either as the nice guy or the good girl who kind of just take it. And then 20 years later, they're like, I'm miserable. I'm not actually really they start to recognize I'm actually not in a relationship. Painful.
Yeah. So when do you want to take charge of your life? What does it mean to be happy? Right. I did a documentary before The Truth About Marriage called The Nature of Existence, where I got obsessed with existentialism in my own life and started asking the question, what is the point of everything? What are we supposed to be doing? What is my purpose? How do I find happiness? And so I set out to answer that question and solve that mystery. And I sought out representatives of every major religion and interrogated them and tell me, why am I here?
Interrogated, I love it.
And collected all their answers and intercut them. And I learned from Julia Sweeney, who is an actress and monologist, when I asked her the question, how do we find happiness? She said that you can't search for happiness. Happiness isn't a goal that you can reach. It's a side effect of having a purpose in life. That's the real question. What is my purpose?
What is your purpose?
If you're following a purpose, happiness comes naturally. It's just a reward for having a purpose. So that's the problem, is probably you're working at a job you hate and you're not following some purposeful life.
It's not feeling meaningful.
Yes. And so how do you find meaning? You have to give your own life meaning. That's where it starts. And if you are with the wrong person and you're afraid to change, or where it can all boil down to me when I wanted something tangible and concrete for how do I find meaning? What I discovered through this process of making The Nature of Existence is that the way to have a purpose is, my purpose is to express myself creatively, daily, in some way.
Nice.
And we're designed to be creative. And it doesn't matter how, maybe you write a poem or you create a new dance, or whether you're a writer or a podcaster or a filmmaker or a painter, or you take up pottery. It doesn't matter, as long as you spend some time doing that daily, expressing yourself creatively, and then you'll finish your project, whatever it is, and then offer it to your social environment. And what has the default becomes having a child. The child becomes your creative purpose.
I was just going to say, right, a lot of my creativity has gone into my child.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for 20 years or however long it takes to kick them out of the basement until they grow some wings and, and have their own life, that's the focus of your life for the most part. And it subordinates your own personal, other creative issues, which we call hobbies. But then when that happens and they leave the nest, you're right back where you started. What do I do now? And that's when people take up pottery or something. Yeah. And realize I need to express myself, or planting a garden. That's another way to bring forth life, to be creativity.
Interesting. Did you talk to any of the kind of religious leaders or spiritual leaders about that finding happiness inside versus outside? Was that part of the conversation?
Well, there's a big divide between Eastern and Western thought or philosophy and religion, where the Western philosophies and religions, the tree that branches is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They're all branches of the same tree.
Yeah.
Where they look outward for happiness. They pray to a God in the sky, please help me, when they're feeling sad or upset. And the Eastern religions, which is Hinduism and Jainism, are the early branches, and Buddhism came later, and others, they look inward. Happiness is within. It's about self-realization and meditation on who am I, what is my purpose. It comes through looking inward, which to me seemed more healthy, to be about looking inward instead of asking the sky for help.
Right. Well, right. And think about then relationships, then the orientation often becomes, I need you to make me happy, as opposed to I can
mistake.
Make you happy.
No one can make you happy. You are responsible for your own happiness.
Yeah.
Another person can enhance whatever level of happiness you have as yourself as a baseline.
Yes.
But if you're unhappy, you're going to attract unhappy people. And if you are a happy person, you're going to attract happy people. Yeah. So get creative. Do things in your life that give you a satisfaction at the end of the day. I painted that side of the house myself, and it feels great. I did that. I can look at it and point at it, and I created that. I cleaned the garage. That'll bring you happiness. You created order out of the chaos. There's so many ways.
I mean, and it's so different for every person. And some of those things may not, right? They may not give you happiness in the process, but knowing that they're done may give you happiness, or doing it with someone else may give you happiness, or just being in that exploration of what does give me joy. I mean, I remember after I got divorced 8 years ago or so, I started looking around at my life and being like, I don't actually want to do the things I used to do. And what does make me happy? And I did actually, I was planting a garden and I was like, is this okay that this is actually making me happy right now instead of the more wild things I used to do? You know, it's interesting that in different phases, different things make us happy.
You are reconnecting with the earth by planting and finding out that that is where you come from, and you need to be grounded, and literally you need grounding in your life. And this idea that happiness is going to come from getting 7,000 likes, or I think we're going to look back and see social media as being this very harmful thing toward our happiness and toward who we are individually.
Yeah.
When let's say you spend every day a little bit of time writing a book, writing your poetry, what have you, at the end of a year, 2 years, whatever, you're going to have a finished product that is something you created that you're proud of and you should be proud of. And if someone says, well, I'm not a writer, well, how many texts and tweets did you just write today?
You write every day.
All these time-wasting writing that you do. You're writing like crazy. Instead of putting it on Facebook where it's gone in 20 minutes and to never have existed, if you put it into a tangible format, you get a much greater sense of satisfaction out of the end result.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, can we switch gears for a moment?
Sure.
You said something that intrigued me before. You said that there was this best date that you'd ever been on. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about what made that possible, or like what made it the best date, and then what led to the best sex of your life.
It's a little bit metaphorical, but it's true in that the best date isn't necessarily one person, but it's sort of what happens on a best date. And this has happened to me.
And this has happened to you.
Sometimes you go on a date with somebody and you want it to work out so bad that you put up a facade, and it's like two masks dating, and you don't know who each other is.
Yeah, that doesn't work so well.
And then if you get into bed, it's also two masks. You're afraid to be yourself because what if they don't like what I like? They'll think I'm weird. And it's a formula that leads to a lack of connection.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I went on a date once and I didn't even think I liked this person. And because of that mindset, I was myself. I was completely myself.
Yeah. But you weren't trying. There was nothing to prove. There was nothing to
I could be totally honest. Yeah. Here's what I want. Here's what I think. Here's what I like. Here's what I like in bed. The sex was amazing because I was myself. And cut to 3 years later, I'm still together with this person who I originally thought I didn't like. Now it's the longest relationship of my life to this point because I entered it in terms of a more honest connection through a little mind game of my own that got me out of the desperation mode. There's nothing less attractive than desperation. And in my documentary, The Nature or the Truth About Marriage, there's a couple in there, a polyamorous couple. And they are, I discovered, a very high functioning couple.
Very high functioning.
And I realized after talking to them, the reason they're so high functioning is not because they sleep with multiple people on occasion. It's because in order to be polyamorous, they had to be completely honest with each other.
They had to
and be unafraid.
Incredible honesty. Yeah.
No fear of saying however they felt, what they needed. So each person knew exactly what they were getting. There were no surprises.
Or fear. They can have the fear, right? A lot of people have fear, but you communicate it anyway instead of holding it back as a result of that fear.
Exactly. Then it's exercised. You've exercised the fear, and it's both people know who they are, and now they accept you for who you are.
Right.
As the Gottmans say, all the experts say that the secret to happiness in a relationship is not getting someone to change in who you want them to be. It's acceptance of your partner for who they are, and acceptance of yourself for who you are and what kind of a species you are, what your needs are. You might consider to be negative by your culture is just a normal feeling.
I remember John Gottman being on this podcast, and he was talking about how Julie wanted to climb Mount Everest. And he was like, I get, not seasick, vertigo, like on ladders. He was like, I did not even want to do that. But, he was like, it made her so happy. So he now has this picture on his desk of her climbing Mount Everest and really supporting each other's desires, even
challenging each other. She challenged him to come out of his shell and to be a better person.
Yeah. so interesting how we can do that for each other. And then without, right, there's a mindset shift so that we're not resenting each other for that, but there's actually, oh, what are we here for? Are we here to help each other grow? You know, in my partnership right now, it's like, we're learning to love better. We actually are exploring a lot that the nature of reality. Who are we actually, and how can we love in a way that is less defended, more honest, kind of like you were saying.
If you go on a date, who decides where to go? Oftentimes it's left up to one person. But if you take turns, I remember going out, I was dating this woman and she wanted to go see this band play. And I had no interest in seeing this band, but I said, okay, I'll go, you know, and we went to see this band and they were called Wilco. I had never seen Wilco. And they were so awesome. I couldn't believe it. And I was so thankful that she opened my eyes to this amazing band that I was so reluctant. I would have never had that experience.
Never gone there yourself.
Without her. And that's your partner. That's what partners do. A good partner. She was different from me. And so we brought each other to different experiences and enriched each other's lives.
So good. What are you most proud of about The Truth About Marriage? It took you a long time to make, and so much of you, invested in it.
Yeah, I started putting myself on camera. I was very reluctant to do that. And I started it with The Nature of Existence. And so I'm kind of proud that I got up the courage to get on camera. It's so hard. I have a new respect for actors. Hitting your marks and remembering lines, that is not easy.
It is not easy. That's so great.
So you have to be honest and genuine. It's so hard to do that. And I got there and it wasn't easy. And when I start each project like that, I don't know where it's going. And it's really a leap of faith. And I'm so proud that I made it there. I got there and I learned something. Yeah. And what I learned was so useful in my own life, and as far as having less conflict, better relationship, greater happiness.
Right. And you started a relationship in the middle of making this.
I started a couple of them over 7 years.
Right.
But, in the old days, it used to be I'd have a relationship and then fall in love, and then it would be a terrible breakup. We'd never speak again. It's so weird how you never speak to someone who you were madly in love with.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't happen that way anymore.
Yeah.
If something doesn't work out, we still remain friends. That's been my experience of late.
I think that's a sign of maturity, right? To be able to look and say, what is best for you? What is best for you, right? Like, oh, we could part without there having to be some major drama or something where I'm hating you or you hitting me, right? To be able to do that in an honest, loving way is beautiful.
Yeah. It's easy to say and hard to do, but it's really necessary because it's not you. It's not personal. It has nothing to do with you. No. Everyone else has their own story that they're involved in.
Yeah.
That's really, it's not about you.
No, it's not, right? Taking it personally is a painful way to live. I also often think about, I really support people to leave people better off than when they found them, and leave them better off for the next person, because otherwise we have so many resentful, exhausted people walking around trying to date each other. And it's just not working.
That's such good advice. Yeah. I made a film about car salesmen called Suckers. And sales is the same. We're selling ourselves when we're going on a date, and a car salesperson is trying to sell you a car, of course. And they have these psychological techniques that they have fine-tuned since way back in the rug bazaars of Persia. And so they're really good at what they do. Yeah. But the best car salespeople don't want a one-off. They want someone who will come back again and
lifetime.
Again and again.
Interesting.
It's not as combative. It doesn't have to be combative.
Right.
And if they leave happy, they'll bring all their friends as well. So it's a relationship, right? It's a short-term relationship, a financial one, but it's the same with personal relationships too. If you behave well on your part, just do the right thing.
Yeah.
When faced with whatever conflict comes up, is to the best of your ability. And that's all you can do. But that'll lead to a better result for you and your friends, your partner, for the rest of your life.
Yes. Yes. Good
Easy
karma.
to say, hard to do.
Easy to say, hard to do, but right? Good karma, as they say. What surprised you the most about making the film?
How easy it is to improve a relationship. What little course correction you can make has vast consequences down the line.
Yeah.
If you just change your expectations. First of all, our expectations are so unreasonable. There's this, we have this myth of exception, of being exceptional, that this relationship is different from all the others. We're immune to all of these problems. that other couples face, we're going to last forever.
I remember those days.
It's not true. You are facing the same problem every couple faces.
Yeah.
And back to John Gottman, he said that all relationships will deteriorate over time. Once you begin a relationship, it begins deteriorating and will come to an end unless you put conscious energy, conscious effort into maintaining it of some kind. And why is that? There's something wrong, right? It should be natural. Obviously, it's not natural for us to be in relationships, or we wouldn't need counselors to help us.
Right.
And what changed, well, this is what the surprise was. I learned that the change has nothing to do with us. It's just that our culture has evolved much more rapidly than we have. We evolved on the African savanna. So all of our emotions and thoughts and behavior patterns are designed for what was in that environment, not the new environment, right? That environment was, we lived in a small tribe of 150 people where everybody knew everybody shared everything. They practiced reciprocal altruism. They knew whose favor, who owed who a favor, who wasn't pulling their weight. And so that person gets ostracized. Yeah. So everyone does their part. Once we grew into big cities, that doesn't work anymore. And so a new thing had to occur, which has evolved into this social monogamy that we're expected to practice. Yeah. And if you don't, you get socially ostracized, or you have to go through this dance where you have to, distance yourself from your partner. He was caught cheating. Well, I have to, distance myself.
Right. And not being honest. I mean, there are really beautiful communities of people who are polyamorous or swinging or whatever. And the norm, right, is that that's not even possible. So then a lot of people end up cheating and having an affair and all of that. And it's a mess.
Starting with recognizing, well, who are you? What are you? Yeah. What are your needs? And why do you have these needs? It doesn't mean you have to act on all these needs, but let's first acknowledge and who you are.
Yes.
And then there are ways to deal with it. I mean, you can be with someone in a monogamous relationship and admit that you are attracted to other people.
Yeah.
And then you can deal with it through role playing, perhaps, or find other ways to express those needs, to satisfy those hungers without harming the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I think kind of like you said, there's so little education. We're given we're not even given a window into people's relationships and how unique and different, they can be. And so we have this sense that we're supposed to follow the mold and just do it exactly. The white picket fence, the 2 kids, the this, the that. And the world just really isn't like that anymore.
No, and that's very new. This idea of marriage for love is less than 150, 160 years old.
That is mind-blowing.
People didn't get married for love 300 years ago. They got married to survive.
Right. Survival, financial, or, my state needs to be bonded with your state, right? Like the kings would arrange the marriages, right? All of that. We didn't actually do it for love.
Women were property for a long time. But for a much longer time before that, human beings as we know them, our species has been around for about 200,000 years. And for 90% of that time, we've lived in small tribes that were communal and shared everything. Yeah. So this idea of living the way we live now is a very recent invention in human history. And that's why it's so hard for us to fit into these pegs, we're round pegs and square holes. Yeah. And it's not easy. And so that's why we need counseling has evolved. And that's why we need counseling to help us get through that. Asking your friends for advice isn't going to get you there. You need to talk to people who actually have helpful advice, who are experienced in relationships.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for putting yourself out there. Congratulations for actually being on camera and, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and honest in that way, and having a relationship now that actually started from that honest place. I'm so happy for you.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Where can people find your film? I watched it on Amazon Prime. Is that the only place?
Amazon is a good place to find all my films, or go to my website, which is just my name, rogernygard.com. And I have links to everything, either on Amazon or on Vimeo, to all my documentaries and feature films. And also the TV shows I work on, like Curb Your Enthusiasm. Season 11 is next.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Roger.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.